All right, everybody, welcome back this Wednesday. I'm really pleased to be joined by a good friend, an attorney with his own law practice, Bengualid Law, Marc Bengualid. He's also in real estate in New York City. So thank you for joining us this afternoon.
My pleasure.
So tell us a little bit about, how you got into the practice of law. I know we've had a few attorneys on here, but everyone has their own unique story and adventure.
Well, so when I finished college, I was doing real estate. I was working in real estate. I was doing conversions of co-op and condos with the people at the time who were big in real estate. And I went on my own afterwards, and I figured I could do this for myself. And then I realized it's an old boys network. All of a sudden, I couldn't talk to anybody. Then I had a couple of jobs I was working on, and I figured I might as well go to law school, do real estate law. And when I went to law school, lo and behold, all the teachers in real estate were the ones that I was dealing with when I was working in the business. So they said, you can't come in my class. You know all the contracts. You knew all this stuff. So I ended up learning how to, figure it out, right? And then I fell in love with arguing. So I ended up doing trial work. So what can I tell you?
I guess that would have been a good profession for me. I like arguing sometimes.
Yeah, you have to learn how to argue, but make sure you leave it outside the front door of your apartment.
Absolutely. And what are your, I could say them, but I'd rather hear from you. What are your various practice areas?
So I do personal injury medical malpractice. I do a lot of side. Before I started off representing doctors, and I used to do special litigation, which is, doing PI work and from the defense side. Now I do basically personal injury medical malpractice. I do a lot of real estate issues, contract disputes, the hot topics in this world right now. Police brutality is one of them. I deal with nursing home cases, basically a lot of that stuff.
And in addition to that, you're, we were talking yesterday because, you're also a landlord in New York City, which is, a hot topic right now, being in real estate in the city. I've been saying for a little bit that I think the market's going to come down a little bit, work from home. Globally, work from home is becoming a thing. Where do you see real estate going?
So there's two. So if you do the residential real estate market, I think that's very interesting. I think right now a lot of people are packing up their bags and putting their apartments on the market. So I think that if anybody wants to buy an apartment, I think you'll have a lot of choices as it's coming up, especially with the rates very low right now. People are leaving. Apartments put it on the market, and rental apartments it's eventually going to come out. In terms of the commercial area, that's interesting. So I think in terms of for tenants, I think there will be commercial spaces. We're hearing a lot of noise. Well, we don't need big spaces anymore. People want to work from home. And then we start hearing that, well, working from home, you don't have that human contact, which is get that energy to come up with ideas, create. It works maybe, on a Zoom meeting, but not as well as being in person. So I think they will have some people staying at home, but I think a lot of it will eventually come back. Question is whether it's big spaces or small spaces, and nobody knows. There's two sides to every coin. So I think it is going to be something. I think you will see that the market itself will be depressed. For people who are interested in buying and selling real estate, I think it's going to be depressed for a while. Banks are not lending right now. They're very tight on their money. They're much of a wait and see issue. So I think, and then de Blasio putting them a lot of taxes and all these things. I understand why people do this. I'm not too sure now is the time to be doing this stuff.
Yeah, I've been calling it the Corona shuffle. People fleeing the city and whatnot. And my broker in New Jersey, where my wife and I own our home, she was told me that you want to sell? Do you want to sell? Do you want to sell? Because everyone's trying to move to the burbs, but still be close to the city.
Oh my gosh, the burbs, the prices in Westchester and in Jersey and Long Island have skyrocketed. It's really unbelievable. I've seen bidding wars. But I don't know, I'm in the city, so if I walk out, my apartment, and you walk up and down, you see things that are boarded. I think it's very sad to see that. But also you see almost in every 2 or 3 blocks a moving company. People are moving out, so you see it all over the place. So I think like everything else, it's a cycle. This is the down cycle, and it'll come back up. It's just a matter of time. I think that I'm very positive in New York. I think it'll come back. It'll be bounced back. I think it'll be very good. It'll be stronger than it was before. So I think there's a lot of positive, but unfortunately, you have to go through the down cycle right now.
since you're an attorney and since you like arguing, which you've already established, and you're also very good at remaining objective, as I know you, let's dig into first the landlord side, talking about commercial real estate, because a lot of folks that watch are entrepreneurs, startup founders. A lot of my guests are, like on the landlord side. What are the arguments for keeping people in a lease and, getting them to maintain paying rent, when their office is, vacant for 3 months, 4 months, 5 months, 6 months, who knows how long it'll be. And then the next question, I want to talk about, the tenant side as well.
So there's two types of landlords. They're the type of landlords that basically say, you have a lease, you have a lease, you have a lease, pay me, pay me, pay me. I don't really care. And that's it. I think those types, I think everybody has to help each other to a point. Unfortunately, the banks are not helping landlords. The banks want their money on the first of every month. They really don't care if you're struggling. They don't care. Their attitude is we're not going to give you a forbearance, or you have to go forward with this. So I think it's hard. I think landlords are being creative. Landlords, the way it works is that, the banks have copies of the leases. So the mortgage is based on the lease. So you can't really say, well, you're paying me X, I'm going to reduce it now to Y, without, the banks figuring out what's going on. So a lot of landlords are being creative. Some people are working, you're doing deals, you're stretching it out, you're helping with payments, you're working things out. The different types of techniques landlords are using to try to get tenants. I also feel that there's some landlords that say, you're a bad tenant, you cause us problems, you're not paying us, then, maybe they may take advantage of that as they go down the road. There is executive orders right now. So I don't know if you know about that. So the executive orders basically say that Cuomo came down and said that you don't have to pay your rent, I guess, or for a period of time, for 3 months. And evictions are stayed until the end of August, August 20th, basically, which is great for a tenant. I don't think it's great for landlords because there's cash flow issues. I don't think it's good for tenants in itself that they take advantage of this without trying to work something out with the landlord. Because I think if you work out something with the landlord works something with you. If you take a hard approach, the landlord takes a hard approach. It comes both ways. The PPP, the people got those loans from the government. It helps them. It took them for the 3 months, or the 8 weeks, I should say. And now those are now expiring. So now you're starting to see what's happening. So now this month is very different than the other months. As for the tenant's point of view, tenants are kind of, some tenants are being aggressive, saying, hey, listen, new world, new order, I'm going to renegotiate my lease. Problem is you actually have a lease. So you really can't do that. You could try to work and deal with it with a landlord. Again, it's the give and take. Some tenants are, using the letter of the law to their advantage. We'll see whether they pay or don't pay afterwards. I think, speaking to a lot of people in real estate, what I've heard is a lot of tenants have not paid, but now they're back to work. So they are paying this month, and they're really starting to catch up on the prior months, and landlords are trying to work something out. Not all landlords are bad, and not all tenants are bad. So I think, there's a way to work things out, but really a dialogue has to take place. People are quiet. It's everybody has the pressure, and everybody's in it together.
And then from the tenant side, I mean, like what, as a landlord, what's a good tenant to you? Like, I mean, like, can you give an example of someone who's approached you to try to work something out, as opposed to just deciding, screw you, I'm not paying rent?
I mean, cannot even imagine how many people call me with different types of deals. Look, I try to work it out. You try to do the best you can. I have my parameters. I have the parameters that I'm shackled by the bank. And I try to work with tenants. Some tenants are good tenants. Some tenants call you up and say, listen, they're upfront with you. They say, this is my issues, and you try to work with them. Some of them, you have a sense all they want to do is take advantage, and you have to figure out who's really in trouble, who's not. I think the ones that are in trouble, like I try to explain to people, it doesn't help landlords if there are no tenants, right? And it doesn't help to the bank. It doesn't help the bank to help the landlord, because it all flows all the way. So everybody has to try to work it out. But, to take advantage, to get out of responsibility. Look, there are tenants that say, look, I can't pay. I'm done. Here are the keys. I wish you well. What can you say? You say that, you could say, well, I can go after the tenant for the balance of the rent. Yeah, some landlords may do that, but I don't think that's really an ethical thing. I think not in today's world. You should just wish the tenant well and, hope they're back on their feet and move on.
I mean, I definitely said earlier on, like my relationship with our landlord, in Midtown started off a little bit contentious, but the minute and then it got smooth and it was fine, and they're very nice people. But once the pandemic started, we had, it was almost like everyone took a step back and was a little bit more chill and relaxed and trying to work with each other as figure out, like, do they eat our security deposit for a couple months? Do they, give us a couple months break and put it at the end? We ended up paying our rent, thanks to PPP, but I was surprised at their willingness to have a conversation.
Yeah, I mean, it's worth having the conversation. I mean, in addition to the executive orders permit landlords to burn down or take down the security to pay the rent. That helps pay the bills. It also helps the tenants. It helps the landlord. It gives people a bigger stretch. So you have PPP for 8 weeks. And if you burn down the security, whether it's 1, 2, 3, whatever the amount of months you have, it kind of stretches it along the time until people are back on their feet. And then they replenish. So I think there's ways to work it out. You can be definitely creative, but both sides have to be willing to honor and go forward with it. I just wish the banks would be, helpful of this. Banks are not really ones that are, their attitude is so far, at least with commercial properties, is, you sign the dotted line, pay when you have to pay.
So you're saying, so I've been reading about like a bunch of banks, local, national, they have huge forbearances, like a fifth of their total, balance. Right. Is that only on residential?
Correct. So there's two types. So there's on residential, and if there's banks that you take in the Freddie Mac, Freddie the Mac, those type of loans, you have the forbearance. You cannot pay 2 months, 3 months. You pay a very little amount, and then after that period of time, you have to pay back, but you have to pay the interest. So I mean, you have that, but in terms of the residential properties, buildings, not your personal home, and commercial, I have not seen that. I know that I've reached out to banks. I've called a bunch of banks to see. The answer has been the same, no.
Yeah, I mean, so that, again, no one ever feels bad for the landlord, but it seems like you guys are in a tough position because you're caught in between a brick wall and a hard place.
In addition to that, people forget the insurance. Everybody has, business interruption insurance, and all these things. And, I don't know if you've seen what's been going on in the insurance world, but the insurance has taken the position that, so if you're an owner of a building and you say, listen, I have business interruption, I want to collect on it. This way I can help the tenants. They don't have to pay. We can try to, work everything out. They have taken the position, oh, well, no, it only is if it affects the physical, and these are the key words they use, the physical structure of your building. So they don't believe that Corona hits the physical structure of your building. So they're denying it. So they're denying it on the landlord's side, they deny it on the tenant side. And then you ask yourself, it's only a matter of a class action lawsuit. It's going to happen sooner or later. I know something happened in Louisiana, right, if I'm not mistaken, down south. I know that they're starting here. So they're telling tenants, they're telling landlords, they're telling people, file your claim with your broker, because if eventually in a couple of years this argument is lost, at least you filed your claim.
Yeah, there was right when the pandemic hit, there was a fight between some landlords down here in Louisiana with Lloyd's of London, and I think that was the earliest of them.
Right, that was that's the restaurant. That's the one that I was talking about. That was the argument about it's not the physical structure, and the restaurant went out of business, and they said it's not true. So they're making that was actually the very first one before the courts closed. And I know the courts around the country have been looking at that, not the courts, the lawyers have been looking at it to see whether or not that argument or those arguments can play out. I mean, there's some great memos that's been written by people that are very much in the insurance world talking about it. It's fascinating to read. I think now owners of properties and then, and also tenants that are renting are going to be looking at their insurance in a very, very different light, because this is a loophole nobody ever thought about.
I mean, so again, you're a landlord, not a tenant, but I mean, what's your thought on, if you were on the other side of it? I mean, you can understand that, again, me as a business owner, I'm trying to hang on, to every thread by paying my staff. I'm trying to, pay their health insurance, especially during this, tough time. And I look at it as I'm killing X amount of dollars every month. I'm actually in my office in New Orleans right now where I'm doing the interview, but I look around, no one's here. And when I came back from upstate New York to New Orleans a couple of weeks ago, I looked around here. I'm like, the hell am I paying for? Do you understand that side, or do you think landlords understand that side?
I think, I mean, I certainly understand that side. I can't talk for all landlords. I think there's, this is going to change how business is going to be done. I've seen from law firms saying that, you could work now 1 day at home, 2 days at home, you can go back and forth. So it's a question of how you want to do it. I think in the smaller businesses, the question is, I think people like to have a place to go, to get out of the home, so to speak, to try to do business. So I think there's still going to be a place for that. I do think that's going to change a little bit how business will be conducted. I think there'll be a lot more online issues, Zoom meetings or webinars, however you want to do it. But I think, the human contact is very important, and the human contact and, being in a room with a couple other people and having that conversation and strategizing and brainstorming. For some reason, doing that on a video call like this, it's not the same. It's just not. I think you're going to need that. So I think, the pendulum swings all the way one way, and it'll eventually come back to whatever's a happy medium. And that will take, whether, people think it'll take 6 months to a year. I mean, I don't know. Who knows? But I think eventually you'll have a little bit of a different way of doing business in the short term. In the long term, I think there will be some changes, but I think, being in the office, especially if there's a vaccine, I think a lot of things will change afterwards. I think what's interesting about this pandemic is that people saw that they run their business with a lot of fat, and they've kind of trimmed the fat. And I think that's going to be, for better or for worse, better for businesses, because they'll be more healthy, and they'll realize, we didn't need to do this. We could be leaner and better and make more profit and put the bottom line in our pocket.
And then pay our rent. And
pay the rent, right?
All right. So I know we spent a lot of time on real estate, and I might have a couple more questions later, but I definitely appreciate you diving into that. But let's talk about the law practice. I mean, you do, medical malpractice, and personal injury work. People are locked away in their homes. I mean, have you seen new case generation, or are there less accidents in the city, or, less med mal because we stopped, any elective surgeries? I mean, what's it been like in the practice areas there?
Right. So until the, I guess, the last couple of weeks, everything's been pretty calm. So it's interesting how you found in New York that nobody died of a car accident. There were no shootings, no stabbings. Everything was quiet. It's a shame that you have to have this to have that peace and quiet. So I think the answer is there's been a lot of fewer cases all across. And, specifically when people are at home, there's really nothing to do in that respect. So the caseload across has evaporated. And again, that goes for, the insurance company has made an enormous amount of money, if you want to think about it, because they're not paying out claims and not doing all that. So they've made a huge profit this year, at least up until now. Later on, we don't know. I did get a lot of phone calls about, people passing away in nursing homes as a result of being COVID. What happened is that for whatever reason, executive order, they took people that were COVID positive, and they shipped them to nursing homes who were not equipped to deal with this. And unfortunately, people were affected, and some of them contracted and passed away. You can't, qualified immunity, you can't do anything with that. You can't go after the government for doing that, whether you agree or disagree with it. I believe there could have been other ways to deal with this, but then again, I'm not the one that's sitting in that seat taking those decisions. So there's a qualified immunity, so you really can't go after nursing homes. I think, looking always, putting your glasses on and going back, hindsight, you always could say coulda, woulda, shoulda, and didn't. I think there's things that can be done in the future, and everybody's going to change. It's how you're going to be doing business in the future.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure that it's definitely there were definitely a lot of mistakes made in the nursing home situation, especially in New York. But as an operator, I would still I know there's immunity, but I would still be a little bit scared because I'm sure that
yeah, I mean, yeah, I think the operators. I think the operators, it's is it the fault of the operator? When you're told that you're getting patients coming to you, and you're saying to the people, hey, I'm not qualified, or we don't have the equipment, we're not ready, and they just show up, and they're putting them in, you have no choice but to take them. I think this, exposes this, like everything else, it's unfortunate, but everything else, like when you have something like this, it exposes the flaws of the system. And, you only wish that, from this, you take it to a positive, and you find a way to fix the problems and move forward and doing everything in a better way. That's where you have to be, you have to be positive about it. It's upsetting to see all this. It's very upsetting. I certainly see the bad of it, but you only hope that you learn from the mistakes and you try to move forward.
Absolutely. So, what's it been like operating? I mean, have courts been closed, or have you been able to do Zoom hearings, or I mean, how are your current cases? How do they proceed?
They're dead on arrival. They're the med mal cases that I have are just not going anywhere. Actually, as of yesterday, the courts just said that you could start doing depositions of doctors. I don't know if until this time, the courts did not permit any depositions of any medical doctors because they are obviously dealing with the COVID issues. So I think it's fascinating right now because if you have a med mal case, now or in the future, it's a different way of looking at it. When you have to deal with jurors, you look at these doctors. These doctors are at the front line. They're every night at 7:00 you hear people clapping. So you have this, this idea of doctors. So when you have a med mal case, it's a different way of approaching it, a different way of speaking to jurors. You have to really look at it in a very different light. So I think it makes it an interesting place to have a med mal case. I think it's a good and bad for both sides, defense and plaintiff, because they're both sides of the coin. But it's a different way of looking at it. So there's been less cases, I think, like in that respect. Courts are slowly opening up. You can't do in-person You can't do in-person yet in courts unless you're in a criminal issue. Then they probably will allow in-person. But right now, it's all. I've had one conversation with a court via Zoom. It's kind of weird. You like to be in the courtroom. You like to, be dressed up as opposed to just put the tie and jacket on for the Zoom call. It's a different way. It's a different way. It's a different way of. I think being in the courtroom, seeing the action there, having to deal with a judge in person is a very different reaction than having the conversation on the screen.
And I mean, even just, I'm sure dealing with clients is difficult to do from afar. I mean, what's that been like too? Because when you're dealing with med mal and you're dealing with personal injury, there's a lot of hand holding and, people have been injured, their family's been injured. What's that been like?
It's sure tough, it's super difficult. It's tough. Clients don't understand, like, I was selecting a jury when this happened and we had to stop. It's a selecting jury for over, for 2.5 weeks and boom, you're told to stop. It's hard because clients say, hey, it's my case. Why is it taking so long? Why aren't you moving it forward? Why can't you do this? And listen, you have to understand, for them, they're injured and they're suffering with this. They want a resolution. They want it for their own peace of mind. They want to move on in their life. They want a resolution. It's hard to tell them that. And, we do a lot of jury trials. And right now, jury trials, I mean, the word has it that 2020, it's not happening. So I think about all these. I have a bunch of cases on for trial this year. It's going to go
not even Zoom, because I saw in Texas they're doing trials by Zoom. New York's not going to do that?
So they're doing what's called a bench trial. A bench trial is just a judge, and you have two lawyers and maybe your witnesses, all via Zoom. But I think when you do a med mal case, as a plaintiff, you certainly want a jury. When you do a personal injury case, you certainly want a jury. You want the jurors to see what's going on, to hear it. And I think that's far more effective. I mean, this is what the jury system's about. So what's going to be hard is that they say no jury trials until the end of this year. then people are saying, or you're hearing, well, maybe no jury trials until there's a vaccine. Well, when's a vaccine? It's like it'd be sometime next year. So just think about it. If you take the argument that there's no jury trials until the end of the year, right? So in January 1, you're going to have how many trials are stacked up? So, who has preference? What's going to happen? So you're going to be delayed at least for another year. So it's hard. A year goes by, witnesses get lost, memories fade, people don't remember. The case I was on, you were up, you had your experts ready, you had your witnesses ready, you had everybody lined up, and you got to stop and start again, and then you have to find the people again. It's hard. But you have to move forward. There's no other way. And certain people are willing to do what you call a bench trial. I think when there's no dispute, or there's a sort of certain dispute, and what people are doing is they're doing what's called a high-low. I don't know if you know what a high-low is. So what a high-low is, so a plaintiff and a defendant will say, you know what, we're going to try this case, but let's agree on the parameters. So let's say, just for easy numbers, a high is 100,000 and the low is 25,000. So so that means that if it were a jury trial and the plaintiff loses a case or gets below 25, the plaintiff gets 25,000. If the jury comes back between 25 and 100, whatever the jury tells you. If it above 100, so if the jury comes back with $100 gazillion, you get 100,000. So you're capped on top and you're capped on the bottom. So what people are trying to do right now is they're trying to agree, and then they go in front of a judge and they try the case in front of the judge. The judge does not know that there is a high-low. The judge says, okay, I think it's a defendant's verdict, plaintiff's verdict. I think I would award X dollars, right? At least you've agreed on a range. Some people are starting to do that. Some people think it's a good idea for like a small car accident case so they could try to move their cases along. And insurance companies seem to like that because it caps their liability on both ends.
And I'm sure that cap they agree to that because that's lower than the highest payout that they know, they calculate what that could be. So they're probably satisfied
Correct.
with even that higher number.
Correct. I mean, the key, some plaintiffs like that because they're guaranteed the low end. They're saying, okay, so if I lose the case, I know that we're going to be covering the expenses and the client's going to get something for the trouble. So people like that, and that's a decision that you have to make with your client. I mean, I think in some cases it makes sense. I'm not too sure in a lot of cases it makes sense. It's a case-by-case decision. I mean, now you're doing it with, bench trial, so that's a whole different way of doing it. It may be worth it, but again, it's a case-by-case decision to try to move cases along. I think that if you have that, maybe cases will go forward in a bench trial way of doing it. Again, bench trial means just with the judge.
And I mean, a lot of people don't think about this either. Just like no one feels bad for landlords, people don't feel for trial attorneys. But I mean, you're talking about delay for 6 months, delay for another year. I mean, as the attorney, you're also laying out a lot of the money,
Huge.
For expert witnesses, for everything, and you're pushing off, your return, far out and into oblivion because you don't know when that is. What's that been like?
Right. I mean, doing a PI and med-mal plaintiffs, they do it on a contingency basis. So, generally it's you kind of say you feed the beast. In other words, you feed your cases, you have to keep the cases going, you purchase an index number, you do a deposition, you speak to experts, you look at witnesses, you have investigators. So that costs money. And as you prepare for trial, there's a lot of cost for experts and money, and it builds up. And you're right. I mean, you have this coming in and all of a sudden stopped. So you have this pipeline that you have where cases come in and you could spend on some cases. It's a business, right? And all of a sudden everything stops to a standstill. And then all of a sudden, what do you do? So, it's tough. It's an interesting time, and I think what's going to happen is that, the smaller people may not make it, or they may just try to merge other people. The defense like, yeah, we love it. Not a lot of, cases right now, but they're like, remember, they're dependent on the plaintiff, right? If the plaintiff has no cases and there's no lawsuits, the defense don't have a job, right? It kind of goes both. So they kind of like us, even though they hate us.
Yeah. But the insurance companies get to sit on the money for now.
Yeah. Oh, they sit on, yeah. They make interest upon their interest, correct.
Yeah, exactly. So,
And then on top of that, even the cases that you've settled, think about it, the cases that you've settled, that we've settled before this happened, right? And then you say, hey, wait a second, the law, so in New York, the law says when you settle, you have, 20 some odd days, 20 days to give the settlement money, or 30 days if you want to give the settlement money to the plaintiff. Like, oh, it's COVID, nobody's in the office, we can't cut the check. I'm like, you gotta be kidding me. 1 month, 2 months, 3 months. Oh, we'll get to it in September. Yeah, come on. But yeah,
that's
it's business.
That's tough. You can either answer both or just pick one of them. Now, I've been told that I haven't mentioned the brick wall enough, even though I said it before. But
Pink Floyd,
exactly,
right?
Yeah, exactly. Brick wall is about challenges and breaking through the challenge if you have to, or getting around it. That's how I teach my team to to apply to all of our work. If there's a challenge, we can find a way, figure out a way to do it. But on that note, what's been your brick wall that you've been facing? What in real estate or law or both of them, what's been your biggest challenge?
So you look at a brick wall like you have to plow through it and you have to go around. Now look at a brick wall as that you have to look at every brick, right? So if you remove a brick, then the wall becomes unstable. So you have to ask yourself, what is it that you want from this wall? If you want it to stand up, you want it to come down. So and if you want it to come down, you strategically take one brick, so it kind of makes it unstable but not falling. You have to decide what you want. So I think that's the idea that you have to deal with, at least in real estate, and try to figure out what is it what you want, so the wall either stand or fall. It's really not that complicated. In terms of law, I think the brick wall is more dealing with how to get your cases going forward at this point. Now you have, it's a lot harder. Just think about it. When a deposition is I'm asking you questions in a room with a court reporter. You have your lawyer there. I'm asking you questions. So you're in a room and you see the body language. You get a sense of what's going on. You react to the person. You react to the question. You react to the answer. Now doing that on a Zoom is a lot harder because I have no idea if you're reading notes. I have no idea if there's somebody in your room. It's like all these things that I don't know if somebody's texting you the answer. These are all questions that we're trying to figure out how to go forward with. It's just a lot harder to do it. There are ways around that. But I think the brick wall is how to get the system working for the people, because right now it's not. And where the lawyers are just the tools for the people to get them their results. And that's the frustration that we're seeing.
That's a great answer, and I like the brick by brick, because I just put my shoulder down and plow through. Before we wrap up, where can everyone find you, find the law firm online? Where are you at?
Thank you. So you could go to bengualidlaw.com. That's BENGUALIDLAW.com, bengualidlaw.com, or I'm at 330 West 38th Street. That's my office there. My phone number is 212-360-5516. Feel free to call. I'm more than happy to field any question anybody has and see if I can help.
And without a broker, you also have space, right?
That's true. There is spaces. I think everybody in New York now has space. It's a question of how to negotiate it.
Absolutely. So if anyone needs it, reach out. I know Marc's got a nice building and great spaces, and we're considering making that our next move. So I appreciate you joining me. Thank you so much. It was a pleasure talking to you.